We represent that swag, that MEAC, and let me say, what's up to Tennessee, stay, and tune into the HBCU Sports Lab with Dr.Cavil, Mike and Charles, and I'm time.
This is Dr.Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Yes, we're bringing you 2 hours of the show today, so you see us popping on a little early, so come on here and join us. We'll give you 2 hours of the special HBCU lab, man. We're going to mix it up for 2 hours, guys. Y'all ready for this, man?
We better be ready. Yeah, we better be. Heck, I even put my jacket on for this one.
There we go. This is Dr. Cavil inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Watson and Charles Bishop, presented by THG Agency, LLC. Welcome and thanks for joining us inside our studio lecture hall, the HBCU Sports Lab, for the only weekly sports talk radio show that is dedicated to exploring the sporting HBCU diaspora, including the marching sport with its unique HBCU culture identity, the teams, the bands, coaches, athletic directors, commissioners, provosts, presidents, big rivalry matchups, classic games, homecoming events, and much, much more of the HBCU athletic aesthetics. As we emerge our lecture with the sport business practices in the competitive sports industry, the show seeks to provide innovative, progressive, and informative dialogue about the week's HBCU sporting events, issues, and ideas from a fan's perspective. We've reviewed the Southwestern Athletic Conference, better known as the SWAC, the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, better known as the MEAC of the NCAA Division I, Southern Intercollegiate Athletic Conference, SIAC, the Central Intercollegiate Athletic Association, and CIAA of the NCAA Division II, Gulf Coast Athletic Conference, GCAC of the NAIA, and independent programs such as Tennessee State of the OVC, Hampton of the Big South, Langston of the Sooner Athletic Conference, and Texas College affiliate member, as well as Edward Waters, as they transition from the NAIA to NCAA Division II and memberships in the SIAC. And so when we say SWAC, we know that means 2 new members of South in 2021. When we say the MEAC, that means 3 less members in the 2021.
That means 6 schools. That means 6 schools now.
6 football playing school, 8 all sports, basketball. Yeah. You're right. So with that, I guess we'll jump to you, Mike. What are some of the HBCU news of the day?
Well, one of the biggest with COVID-19 impacting a lot of institutions, sports organizations. Morehouse College has announced that it will cancel its fall sports. This will impact the cross country and football sponsored athletic programs. So like all decisions, David Thomas weighed that very carefully. I'm sure he had a lot of advisement. He's looking at the numbers that are increasing, particularly in Georgia, particularly in the Atlanta area. And he is thinking of the health and safety of incoming students. I suspect this won't be the last. My folks in San Antonio and Austin are telling me that Houston-Tillotson also decided to go down this route as well and cancel their sports programs as well. I don't have the details, but I have family that attend Houston-Tillotson. So I was getting that via Texas, but I heard from a number of other sources that is the case. So that's my first news of the day. And there'll be many more like it, unfortunately.
I agree with you, Mike. In a lot of ways, I think this is just the start. And actually, it was Houston-Tillotson University that put it out there first. So that was an official announcement at Houston-Tillotson University. So your family is giving you the latest and greatest in regards to what's going down in Austin as far as it is with Houston-Tillotson University. I don't think, obviously, they had, hit the major news in a lot of ways because they don't have football. But Correct. They canceled all their fall sports. So that is significant as we report on all HBCU. So I'm glad you got that out there. With that, Charles, let's go to you with some other news of the day.
Sure thing. Well, let's take a look at Jackson State. They announced a partnership with Open Doors. Jackson State invests in a personal brand building for student athletes. Open Doors is an athlete marketing platform that helps the biggest brands in sports share content on social. So that's a huge Jackson State looks to be one of the first HBCUs to sign a partnership with Open Doors, and this will allow Jackson State to share content on the social media with the entire athletic ecosystem through social channels of current student athletes, alumni, coaches, sports administrators, university athletics accounts, creating access and opportunities no other HBCU has been able to offer before. So that comes to us from Jackson State Athletics.
Man, that's pretty big. I mean, you can't just slip through that a little bit. Give us a little more in your thoughts on that. I know it's Jackson State University and you want to play coy, but that's a big thing, Charles. So you can stick your chest out a little bit. Go ahead. You got that nice little shirt on. Show everybody your shirt. Pull it up a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Support black journalists. I love it. I love it. That's a nice little all day. So tell us, what's the big... Exactly. Appropriately there, but tell us why you think that's a big deal.
Well, in the day and age of social media, anytime you can have your athletes who can more or less brand themselves through a content provider like Open Doors, I think that's huge. And it's a recruiting tool. It's another tool in the toolbox for Jackson State Athletics.
Absolutely.
Great point.
Go ahead and boast a little bit more.
Yeah.
You can tease it up a little bit.
Hey, I do my best to kind of stay in the box so here, so I don't get accused of. But I think that's huge. Athletic Director Ashley Robinson putting that together for his student athletes at Jackson State. I think it's going to be huge for their athletes down the line.
No doubt about it. With that, Mike, do you have any additional news that you want to get out there?
Yeah, from the office of the SWAC. The SWAC announced its 2019-2020 Academic Awards and Commissioners Honor Roll. And first up on the plat, wait for it. CB, you can flex your chest again. Jackson State claimed the 2019-2020 Academic Success Award, finishing with a total of...
Now, this is getting ridiculous.
Yes. Jackson State is all in... So based on the points...
That's only because Mike jumped you. Go ahead, Mike. We sorry about that.
No, he ain't. So they finished with 30 points based on the point scale system used to determine an institutional winner. So we all joke around, but congrats to Jackson State, the University UAPB, University of Arkansas Pine Bluff, and Mississippi Valley rounded out the list of the top 3 finishers. Of course, Alabama State claimed the All Academic Achievement Award, which is presented to the athletic program that has the highest percentage of student athletes that earned a GPA of 3.0 or better during the 2019-2020 academic year. So, of course, rounding out the list, Mississippi Valley finished second, and UAPB and the Bulldogs, the Alabama A&M, rounded out and finished third place. So kudos to all of those universities on a fantastic year, given the circumstances, given all that they've had to deal with. Still, congratulations to all of those student athletes.
No doubt about it. Great momentum that you putting up there, Mike, and good stuff there. Charles, do you have some additional news that you want to get out there?
I do, and this came from Delaware State this morning. After weeks of speculation, the MEAC can breathe a sigh of relief. Delaware State University President Dr. Tony Allen, he stated on Tuesday morning that the school has no plans to move its athletics department out of MEAC, and this is a quote from him: "You don't have to expect any changes. I know you've heard all the rumors. We've been very thoughtful about this with respect to how we affiliate and what we need from the athletic conference, particularly the MEAC, and what our go-forward path is as we move." So that comes from Delaware State today. Looks as though the rumors were just that, rumors. They will continue to stay in the MEAC.
Yeah,
yes.
that means the NEC said not right now. I tried to tell y'all that it takes 2. You can look. And they admitted we did look at our options.
We did look.
But it takes 2 to tango. That means that somebody has to say, hey, this is a good fit. And that's not really anything to knock the institution. Sometimes it's about, does the institution already have a number of teams in such a way that they don't want to split any more money unless you can equal that. And we'll talk about that maybe the second half of the show as we move forward. But I'm glad that you tied it down, the Delaware State sticking with the MEAC, so people can stop losing their mind in regards to the immediate demise of the MEAC. We can get on to talking about the SWAC. With that, let me jump in here and give some shout out to our followers that jumped on this hour early. As we said, we will have Dr. McClelland, the SWAC commissioner, on pretty much shortly. So with that, let's give some love. Dr. Gabriel Selassie, member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, old head as we talk about in these parts down here, Mike.
Oh yeah,
Ada Gamma chapter, big time buddy. African American Studies professor extraordinaire in a lot of ways out there in California. So showing us some love. Aco Drew from giving us some AD out there doing it big time for us. Brian and the AD show, catch them on the BCSN network, like College Sports Network, regularly as they do their thing. And a lot of times you've seen us recently partnering up in regards to bringing you this breaking news from the SWAC. So check them out. They have a keen insight that you can't quite get anywhere else. So they're another team to reckon with when you're talking about bringing you that HBCU news. And obviously, they're from that Tallahassee, the Rattler area, talking about that strike again. So they have a nice little slant that you can't quite get anywhere else either. So check out Sports Rap, as they like to call it, with Brian and AD. Lawrence D. White talking about, hello, fellas. Big D checking in. Go PVU Panthers. All right. Reggie Hill. Right. Good afternoon, family. Coming up there from Virginia, Richmond. In regards to repping that CIAA, I was on guest on his show the last 2 weekends on Saturday, giving us some good love there. Check Hunt coming in here from Monroe. You know he's going to represent Monroe in terms of that. Anthony Weston, big-time Bulldog, Alabama A&M. He said, don't y'all ever forget that bite because they trying to make a mark. What's going on there? Y'all better recognize them Bulldogs. They come.
It's been more bark lately. I'm sorry.
Hey, and Dr. Cavil, I do want to send a shout out St. Luke's Hospital. They are a frequent listeners back there in the lab to the Dr. Cavil show. So I definitely want to send a shout out.
Yeah, we got a whole lab checking us out. Right. Real folks in the lab. Yeah, man, first responders up there. We gonna give them much love, extra time. So appreciate you shouting them out appropriately, Charles. They are really at the front line and doing all the big time help that we need. Thomas White out there getting it done with Mogul Threads. We got a partnership that y'all need to watch out for coming not too late. It'll be sneaking around there. And without further ado, as he's getting straight, we're gonna bring him in, not waste his time. This man is riding high. Sharp. Look at Sharp, man.
Look at Sharp. What did Madea say? You casket sharp. Oh man!
as we do, as everybody knows, so no further introduction there. But let me give a couple more shouts out here. Brian, clean sweep for Jackson State. He's on here. We told you about the Brian and AD show. Amos Fawcett is on here. Michael Road Dog Reese, Southern. We got the FAMU folks in the house. Southern folks in the house. I told you, Prairie View folks in the house. So the SWAC is representing like they always do in many, many different ways. And we have all those CIAA, as we said, SIAC, Gulf Coast Athletic Conference, as we say, GCAC, and the MEAC. But right now, it's all about the SWAC because we got Dr. Charles McClelland, commissioner of the SWAC, boy, as they like to say in different parts. The Super Conference is official.
Well, I appreciate you and Mr. Washington having me on the show. I do apologize for all of the mix-ups, but please just know it's been a whirlwind.
No problem. We got Charles up there in the corner. You know, he's sitting up there quiet.
He showed up.
Yeah, he showed up. And so, as we get in this interview, you've made your rounds around the interview. As you said, you told everybody that you would be inclusive, open to talking to people, but we wanted to go a little into it more than what some people may have decided to ask you or would feel comfortable asking you. But we don't want to kick this can around anymore. You know me on the professor side. I try to study this. And so I've listened to many of your interviews, and people would get around to talking about expansion even more. 2+3. I guess they're going to call it the gigantic conference after a while, getting to 14. But with that said, on a serious note, I thought you broke it down in a lot of ways, saying, hey, if we were going to expand to 14 teams, that means you're looking at whether there was going to be Langston in the West, maybe, Clark Atlanta, Tuskegee, for example, some of these schools. So for me, when I broke it down, even before that, but certainly after I started hearing it, I said this really came down to, in my mind, 2 schools that were already Division I, that there may be an opportunity for them to come into the SWAC. South Carolina State, people would say, North Carolina Central, but in my mind, they were really too far out the footprint. And so that leaves Bethune-Cookman and Tennessee State. So as this all comes down, and now we know what the answer is, the question begs to ask, why did Bethune-Cookman rise to the top, and what happened in regards to Tennessee State, if you will?
Well, again, I appreciate you having me on the show, and I appreciate the direct question, and I promise to give you direct answers. And the short answer is Bethune-Cookman really wanted to be a part of the Southwestern Athletic Conference. They were extremely aggressive. They reached out. They knew that we had brought in Florida A&M, and I've heard many people say, well, wherever Florida A&M goes, Bethune goes. And I know that they had been conducting their research and their analysis even prior to the Florida A&M decision. But obviously, once Florida A&M was accepted in the Southwestern Athletic Conference, it was that additional incentive for Bethune-Cookman. It was kind of being at the right place at the right time. But Bethune was extremely aggressive. When you talk about our plan, especially after Florida A&M came, you know, whether we were going to stay at 11, whether we go to 12, whether we go to 13, or whether we go to 14. We took a look at what Florida A&M brought. They brought name brand, they brought recognition, they brought budget, they brought fans, they brought academic status, they brought bands, they brought everything that our other 10-member institutions already bring to the Southwestern Athletic Conference. So it was a natural fit. So when you start looking at that 12 team, you start to try to check off all of those boxes. So let's talk about the Division II process. You know, there are some outstanding Division II programs. There are some programs within Division II that will fit geographically, they will fit academically, they would check all of those boxes off. But when you're starting to look at what this conference is about from an athletic standpoint, right, you're going to have to be able to come in and compete at a high level. We're not looking to add really just for the sake of adding. We're trying to add to enhance our conference. So when you start checking off those boxes, to be able to have to join this conference in Division II, if you're at max football scholarships, you're at 36, right? So when you start looking at basketball, they're significantly lower. Baseball significantly lower across the board. So we're looking for teams to be able to come in the Southwestern Athletic Conference and be able to compete. In this COVID-19 environment, most division schools will have to double their budget at the minimum just to come in at the minimum level within the Southwestern Athletic Conference. We were not looking for that. So when you draw the map from a geographical standpoint, South Carolina is too far, North Carolina is too far. So when you look at the member institutions that checks all of those boxes, you really came down to Tennessee State and Bethune-Cookman. And Bethune-Cookman was ready to go. I will say this, and I will say this very clearly, because I said I wouldn't dance around the question. There was zero indication that Tennessee State was wanting or prepared to join the Southwestern Athletic Conference. But let's go to a comparative analysis. And again, Tennessee State brand is unquestioned. Tennessee State is a big fish in the small pond of HBCU athletics. But Bethune-Cookman has a larger budget. So that means when they come into Southwestern Athletic Conference, the propensity for them to continue their athletic ability to compete at the highest level is going to be high. As a matter of fact, you could argue from a budgetary standpoint that Bethune-Cookman is second highest, and then some say they're highest in the Southwestern Athletic Conference. I saw the memo that President Ruth Simmons put out, Mike, and I'm gonna go with the $17 million number per player. So that puts
I'm going with that $17 million as well.
There you go. So that puts Bethune-Cookman at second, right? So when you talk about their ability to be able to draw fans, Tennessee State's average was somewhere around 8,800. Bethune-Cookman's average was close to 6,800. But keep in mind, some of their larger, most attended games are not counted in that number. If you throw in their Florida A&M number, right, then they're up 10, 12,000. So when you compare attendance, the attendance was about the same. From a geographical fit, it worked for us from a division standpoint because they'll be tied with Florida A&M. So when teams go, they can do now the Texas two-step, they can do the Florida two-step. They allow them to align the division. And with the aligning of the divisions, then that means now we can do that divisional play where we can have Texas come into Florida periodically, Texas come into Alabama periodically. If you added a team that wasn't with Florida A&M, now you have to reshuffle travel partners, and it could be a significant travel issue. So when you start checking the boxes and when you start looking at what Bethune brings, especially with Florida A&M coming into the fold, they were a natural fit, they were a financial fit, they were academic fit, they were a competitive fit, they were a fan base fit, they were academic fit, and oh, by the way, they really wanted to be a part of the Southwestern Athletic Conference. And for me, that's the best fit of all. All of my success as an athletics director came from coaches that really were hungry and really wanted to be a part of what we're doing. And we think we're doing something special in the Southwestern Athletic Conference. So all boxes were checked, thus Bethune-Cookman. I hope that answers your question, Dr. Cavil.
No, that answered it for me. I think it gave people a greater perspective because people wanted to know. So we wanted to ask that question from that perspective of really taking a deeper dive. Obviously, we know what Bethune brought to the table, but when you juxtapose it against the rest of the field, that gives us a better indication of what that really looked like when we're talking about, you know, the SWAs, the ADs, VPs of athletics, the presidents and chancellors of the conference, and the commissioner in regards to what really goes into this puzzle when you talk about expansion, conference tournament from that perspective.
Right, but again, I want to be clear. Bethune was our focus, right? But I don't have any, and I'm trying to think of the right adjective. There was nothing that came to me or my desk that led me to believe that Tennessee State was interested in joining the Southwestern Athletic Conference.
That makes sense. And obviously, in this professional setting, with all the commissioners talking to each other, you want to keep it professional, so you don't just go reach out to a conference without going through it. It's just like having the ability to talk to a football coach or a basketball coach. You're going to ask the leadership first, is it okay we talk? And so if there's nothing serious in there, why do you even engage with that? So if somebody doesn't give you the indication, there's no reason to go out there. It's like you have the chance and you have this one young lady that really is all about you, but because you think somebody is a little more dynamic, as we, the fellas might say it, you know, looks better in here, you're going to be like, no, you better choose, as your mama told you, better choose the one that loves you.
Right. Absolutely.
I was seeing how you're going to finish this one, Doc.
I don't know if y'all listened yesterday. He started talking about my wife being beautiful. I
don't know. CB and I were looking at like.
but I do concur. There are steps, there are processes to all of this, and you have to take one step at a time. And again, without going into all of the things that occurred, I just reiterate the point that we had zero indication that Tennessee State was wanting and willing to come. And we had a 100% confirmation that Bethune-Cookman was wanting and willing to come to the Southwestern Athletic Conference.
Thank you for sharing that. Mike, since you busted my chop, won't you get in here and ask a couple questions?
I don't know. Dr. McClelland got on me about my Prairie View education and how I was interested the last time we were here, so I'm going to give it to him direct. Seriously, thanks for coming, Dr. McClelland. My question is this. The cat's out the bag. The work started. You have a mountain to start the climb. You know, what in terms of marketing and branding, you know, are you going to do anything different with the contract with ESPN? I know it's a longer term. And then what do you think are the, you know, first 3 crucial steps to now branding the SWAC now that you've got 12 teams?
Great question. And the short answer is an honest answer. We're still formulating all of the things that we think that we need to do and have to do. Again, we have been handed the keys, and I think this was the analogy, so I'm going to use a different one so Kenyatta won't get to the fold. We have 2 great assets that are coming into the Southwestern Athletic Conference that they need to get to learn our intricacies, and we need to get to learn their intricacies. And I think we both know each other very well. They're synonymous to the Southwestern Athletic Conference ways and doings, and we're synonymous to their ways and doing. So quite frankly, it's a natural fit. When you start talking about marketing and branding, the first thing really is media rights, right? And we can go to ESPN. If I was ESPN, would I renegotiate? Probably not. But we're going to go. We're going to ask. If they don't, you know, the contract is up in a few years, and you know, kind of as they say, pay me now, pay me later. But we know that our branding has increased. Marketing needs to increase. There are some things that we have planned from a marketing standpoint. We have a marketing agency that we hired that will assist us in getting our brand out. Our Twitter numbers are up. Our Instagram numbers are up. We've trended twice in the month of June. Obviously, FAMU and Bethune-Cookman coming in. So, you know, there are a lot of eyes on the Southwestern Athletic Conference. That means that we have to do things correctly, and we have to continue to move the needle forward. But I tell you, Mike, one of the things that's going to assist me greatly in marketing the conference, and that is having competitive teams in every sport. And as we go out there and as we start putting these games on, and I go back to the ESPN deal, I got criticized some by, you know, some SWAC fans to say, why do you not have every SWAC football game on the ESPN platform? And my response to that is we wanted to deliver a high quality content. We paid for our broadcasting entity to go out. The same entity that ESPN buys in certain areas. And it's Sam. I give Sam a shout out, DNA Studios out of Houston, Texas. He was the one that broadcasted and produced our games when I was at Texas Southern with AT&T South. So we know that he has a quality brand. He does University of Houston games, and all of those games are sent to ESPN. We wanted to put games on that have multitudes of people in the stands. The reason why we did the games are because we control the broadcasters, we control half of the content from commercials, we control everything else. So we get the space from ESPN, and then we share the commercials. ESPN actually picked up some of our games and had them on ESPN Goal Line. And I was shocked when I was at the Prairie View Southern game. We were watching LSU, and then here's Prairie View and Southern. That is what ESPN was looking for from the Southwestern Athletic Conference. Quality games that meet their standards that they can expand our brand on. We have, every institution has the ability to put their games out on their own digital network. So we were not looking just to put games on with 2 camera angles, tying in to the home radio, and nothing against home radio, but what we were wanting was that quality, crisp broadcast so we can show ESPN what our product is. It worked. ESPN has come back and saying, Charles, if this year kicks off, we want more of those games. We want more Saturday games. Keep in mind, we only have one Thursday night game. All of those other games were Saturday. Now, they were tape delayed, And then the others were ours live on ESPN3, and theirs obviously was on ESPN3. But that was the next logical step to us getting some live Saturday games. So it was about quality. It was about product. And again, just look at what we are now. Just pick a town from Houston or from Prairie View all the way to Daytona Beach in 2021, and you're going to have a game that everybody is going to want to see, Black college football. So again, there's a lot of branding that we have to do, but the media rights piece is going to be key. We want to expand the media rights piece. We want ESPN to give us more latitude to be able to give them first right of refusal, and then the rest of those games we can go out and sell on another national basis. We were not quite there yet before because there were some things that we quite frankly didn't feel fulfilling the ESPN contract. But as we do things correctly, we get greater level of latitude, and all of those will be things that we'll be looking for in that new media right. But, and I haven't done this yet, but I did say I was going to put a couple of billboards out in the state of Florida when you drive in from North Carolina, Georgia, and Alabama. You know, you're entering SWAC country. So just to let everybody know.
I do want to explore a little more in terms of the television deal, and you know, exclusionary versus first rights, secondary rights, tertiary rights, where we may go. But before I do that, I wanted Charles to jump in here and ask some questions.
Sure. Let me ask this question in regards to one of the crown jewels of the conference, the SWAC championship game. And when you take a look, and I've listened to a number of your interviews in terms of you talk about knowing your worth and knowing the brand value of the SWAC. With the addition of Bethune-Cookman and Florida A&M, does it change the dynamics of the SWAC championship game from possibly going from a campus site to opening it back up to another venue, possibly?
Well, I actually think the SWAC championship game at home has led us to the point that we are right now. And that is for schools to have the ability to be able to generate the type of revenue that we've allowed them to generate. It has just excited our fan base. It put a different level of excitement from our conference. When I went back to the Council of Presidents, I asked them that exact question because there was actually a city that had, in my mind, a pretty decent proposal. And they said, go back to the table. And I said, what's the number? And they said, you'll know it when you hear it. And that number was a pretty good number. So that meant that, you know, triple, quadruple what that number was. But when you look at what our championship game brings, and I'm just looking at that block helmet, you know, on the right side of you to the left side of my screen, Jackson State. Let's just say hypothetically Jackson State hosts that game. They have 65,000 plus seats. Average ticket price, 6 times 4, Kenyatta, with that Prairie View education I have, I think it's 22, right? 6 times 4 is 24. That's $2.4 million, excluding parking, excluding sponsors, excluding all of the revenue that it brings to Jackson, Mississippi. And you could do those numbers around stadiums all across our membership. Our championship game went from a product that was taking money outside of our coffers to now re-energizing and putting a significant amount of resources back into our member institutions. So, again, we never say never. If somebody wants a championship game, they just know, again, we know what our worth and value is. So you're going to have to come with a number that's going to be acceptable for us to take all of those resources out of our schools and out of our cities and bring it to your city.
Yes, as we jump back into that equation, as we really get into the financial aspects, the business side of how this looks, we really love to engage with our listeners. Let's go back to that television framework. You know, my understanding to some degree, our first contract with ESPN that went way back was more of an exclusionary type of deal. And you have these like proprietary type of deals, secondary rights, tertiary rights. Many people have seen this in regards to probably most famously the SEC and now the Big Ten, ACC, where your first rights can go to a network, and then your second rights can go to a different network. Your third rights can go back to your institutions, or you can bundle them up and create a television network like SEC did, and like I said, Big Ten also did it. Pac-12 has some formula that they look at, and then ultimately ACC most recently, or you have something where your tertiary rights go back to the schools, and you see the Texas Longhorns creating their own network, which was radically different. That's out there. In your mind, in terms of as this deal, obviously over a period of time, starts to look at negotiating, what are your thoughts in terms of how we may move forward as a conference, and what formula we might look at in terms of our television rights moving forward?
Well, I think ultimately we want all of our rights. We don't want 5 or 10 games on TV and the rest of the games are shelved. But let's go back to when the original ESPN deal was signed. Commissioner Robert Viles, signed a heck of a deal. If you recall, prior to the ESPN, we were on the NBC network. Willie Gary was able to create that network, put us on a national platform, which ultimately led to us getting the ESPN deal. It was the right deal for the Southwestern Athletic Conference at that time. Stuart Sharp negotiated the second deal. It was the right deal for us at that particular time. 10 years later, when it's time to go back to the table, we're going to have to negotiate the right deal for the Southwestern Athletic Conference at that particular time. And for us, fortunately, each time those deals were negotiated, we've moved forward in what the SWAC is able to bring to the table. So when we go back, we're going to have Bethune-Cookman, we're going to have Florida A&M, we have increased attendance, we have put resources in showing our fans on TV in massive numbers, right? Last year, all of the games that we showed, the stands were packed. So it shows what the SWAC is all about. We no longer showed last year empty stands on a Thursday night where you could hear people yelling across the field, because that's not what SWAC is. And because we committed to those Thursday night games, a lot of our stands were not packed. Also, we have this championship game that we have created now that has all of this buzz and all of this energy. And I'm proud of the fact, not saying that I had anything to do with it, but 2 years ago, we were 3,000 fans less than the Pac-12. And I think last year we were 8,000 fans less than the Pac-12. So if this FCS conference can put almost as many people in the stands as the Pac-12, and again, it was really only because of capacity of Alcorn. If we move that game to Southern University or Jackson or some of the other stadiums that we have, we outdraw the Pac-12. That's significant. And those are the types of numbers. And with this being, the addition of these two member institutions and the, interest of what we have, if that continues to grow, our deal with whoever we go with, preferably ESPN, is going to look a lot different. And let me say this, ESPN has been a tremendous partner for us. And our growth is directly contributed to ESPN from a marketability standpoint. MEAC SWAC Challenge Celebration Bowl, we would not be where we are at this point in time had it not been for ESPN buying into. So they are great partners. I anticipate continuing the partnership, but we're going to nudge them some to make sure that we get some of the things that we want. And that includes giving me my rights back. I've said that at Texas Southern all day, every day, Dr. Cavil. I want my rights. I just don't think that you take them and you shelve them. That's the deal that we signed last time, but that's going to be a significant push this go around. And I'm not saying we can get them all, but I guarantee you we're going to get something.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to really hear where were we going in terms of if we get in the position about renegotiating this contract or when the contract is up. Because I know your interest on that side of the ledger and what you were able to do with Texas Southern about getting the game on television. With that, I want to shift to Charles for a follow-up question and then follow up Mike as well. So Charles Bishop, if you would follow up with another question.
Sure. One of the questions that I'm getting texted here is there a way to assess the value of Florida A&M and Bethune-Cookman coming into the conference? Is there, a monetary amount of some sort that we can say this is what they bring to the conference?
Yeah, there is, and it's difficult to do so, but we know it's in the multiple millions of dollars. But you can break it into athletics, you can break it into reputation, you can break it into university, you can break it into fan base. So when you ask that question, there's multi-layers and multi-tiers of it. But to add a Florida A&M and a Bethune-Cookman, I will go back and say this: sponsors have been calling, and we have. I'm very pleased with the level of interest now in, our conference. There was always high interest, but they have really rejuvenated some of the sponsors, even in this COVID-19 era. So even if we went out and had somebody to do a study, those numbers are going to change, but we know it's, $15-20 million range of the net worth that they bring to the conference overall. Yeah. And keep in mind, you're talking about their fans going to our schools, branding, marketing. So there's a lot that goes into that overall process. But again, we didn't need to do a study to know that FAMU and Bethune was valuable, and we needed. We saved that money. Very clear that they were worth their weight in gold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's some of the classroom consulting work that we did at Texas Southern University. We teach them class. We learned that real fast. Yeah, there's some real value out there, and you need to be able to calculate pretty fast instead of hiring everybody to do that stuff. With that, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, Dr. Gould, let me ask a little bit more of a far-reaching question. Now, you got kind of to say the horses in the stable, and you have this mega HBCU conference. And if you look at the UT network, and I think that one of our listeners had a similar question along this around, they asked about the SEC conference, the network, the ACC network. Is it far-fetched to think maybe 3 to 5 years down the line that the SWAC kind of has the infrastructure, the branding, the power to maybe have its own SWAC network in some way, form, or fashion?
I think we're probably 7 to 10 years down the road. There's still some things that we have to do in order for that to really have some legs behind it. And there's a lot of steps to creating your own network. And to be able to create your own network, you got to have, solidified numbers that the network can sustain itself. And not to give too much away, I would say 7 to 10 years. But don't be surprised if you hear more about that as time goes along. What better, when you look at these networks, they're all subset of the major networks. ESPN has them all, right? So, what better synergy would ESPN have with the Southwestern Athletic Conference than to give us our own channel? So we'll see, but there's still some work to be done.
Yeah. Thanks.
I got a little twinkle in my eye on that one, so I had to be careful. I was going to ask one type of question, and I was like, well, never mind. Let's go back into the scheduling component of this as we shift from a purely business perspective of expansion and what does this mean on some of the outside sources of revenue opportunities. But let's look a little more internal in regards to the sport. Obviously, there's been a great deal of focus on scheduling from football, to some degree basketball, but baseball. In those conversations, a lot of people have talked about the travel distance and how you can arrange your conference in those travel distances. For the most part, it sounds like the football probably is going to stay at 8 games. Obviously, there'll be a chance for people to have input and revisit, whether that's 9 or what have you. But get a little more into, if you would, the technicalities outside of, we know that some team that is currently in the East will shift over to the West, and we kind of named who they were. Valley, Alcorn, or Jackson State could even be in that picture in terms of that factor, because they're part of those travel partners that exist. So even bypassing that, what is the lineup in such a way why it's important to who shifts over and how that affects those rivalries as well as the travel component? So if you take a deeper dive and look at that for us, we'd appreciate it.
I apologize. One of the things that we're committed to is ensuring that we don't take away rivalries, right? So you have 3 schools in the state of Mississippi, and if one of those go to the Western Division, we want to make sure that they continue to maintain those rivalries. Also, we're looking at competitive balance. But again, and I've heard that a lot. I'm not quite sure. It's one of those things. Be careful what you ask for on competitive balance, because you think you're getting something on one side, it could very well harm you on another side. Our league is just that deep now, and travel and distance will be the primary source and responsibility for us to be able to schedule. For example, AD Brian Hicks from Alabama A&M called and said, "Don't forget, we're going to Texas twice this year, so when Florida A&M and Bethune-Cookman comes in, don't reset the travel, because we had to do it." And we know that was a significant concern, not only from FAMU and Bethune-Cookman, but from Arkansas Pine Bluff, from Texas Southern, from Prairie, and everybody in the middle. So when we start looking, and we've said this very clearly, we have to go back to our membership. Because we've actually heard some coaches say, "No, you can't bring FAMU and Bethune-Cookman in, and we don't get a chance to see them." From a financial standpoint, we got to make it. But the basis that we're going to start with is from an Olympic sports perspective. We are not going to go away from division. So if you're in the Eastern Division, you play Eastern Division, and if you're in the West, you play West, and then you meet up in the championship. Which for me means that we probably have to do some additional expansion for championships. But again, we'll have to, explore that. For sports, for the Olympic sports such as golf, that doesn't change. They all meet in one place. Bowling, that doesn't change. They all meet in one place. Tennis, that doesn't change. They all meet in one place. For tennis, for track, that doesn't change. They all meet in one place. So at that point, you start to get to football and you start to get to basketball. From a football's perspective, in my guesstimation, we'll take it back to the coaches, back to the SWA's, athletic directors, and presidents and chancellors. But there was a huge 2-year debate about 8 games, 9 games, 10 games, 11 games, right? We settled on 8 between 7 and 9. That allows them 3 games to do what they want to do. You can play your game guarantee. You can bring in your game guarantee, and then you can go out and play that last game. And I think this goes back to your original question, Dr. Cavil. Some schools, not by force, but by the fact that we have 12 strong schools that are going to have a high level of attendance. Some of those games that our schools are playing, they might not play. And some of these schools might get left out of playing the Southwestern Athletic Conference because, let's just say hypothetically, I'm not saying that this is going to happen, but let's say Southern and FAMU are not on the schedule. I can't see Southern giving up Florida A&M, right? Whether they play it at home or whether they create their own classic. So if Southern has a game guarantee, or Alcorn has a game guarantee, and Alcorn brings in a game guarantee, I don't foresee Alcorn giving up a FAMU or Bethune-Cookman because those games are going to be staying. Well, some of these other third-party games are going to start to get left out. Hopefully it takes away, and I don't, I got in trouble for calling the names, but a lot of these NAIAs and some of them
be nice.
We're pushing for our teams not to play those games because, again, the mode now is Celebration Bowl, and if you don't make the Celebration Bowl, good opportunity to go to the FCS playoffs. So we want to strengthen our schedules, and some of those schools are going to get pushed out. Some of these schools that are coming to the SWAC and playing us just because they know they're going to get large fan bases, some of those games are going to go away again, not because we're saying don't play them, but the inventory is not going to be there. So we'll give them 3 games. And with that 3 games, that'll be 3 teams in either division that you don't play. So, for example, for Texas, you don't have to go to Florida but once every 4 years, right? You don't have to go to Alabama but maybe once every 2 to 3 years, depending on how we do it. We might not opt for that. We might do something different, but there's mathematically a possibility that Prairie View or Texas Southern or Arkansas Pine Bluff would only go to Florida once every 4 years, right? So we wanted to make sure that we shrink the map and limit the travel. All schools are ultimately going to save on travel. And for basketball, as you know, we're at 18 games now. We'll have to make a decision if we want to go to 20. If we stick with 18 games, that means, again, we're not in divisions, but everybody closest to you, which ultimately will be your division opponents, you'll play them home and away. That's 10. You'll play everybody else on the other side, So that'll be what, 6, and then you'll have that one game that you can play as a rival game. So if anybody shifts to the east, whoever shifts to the west from the east, you can maintain that rivalry with the 2 Mississippi teams. If you go to 20, then there's another motto for that. I've heard some talk about a 16-game schedule, but again, that's going to be convoluted from a standpoint of we're trying to get the net up, we're trying to get our teams to be more competitive. We're trying to bring in more Division I games, not take away Division I games. So that kind of goes against our philosophy from a competitive standpoint. So scheduling is going to be fun, but we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I really think, and I know we're at the top of the hour and you have another engagement, so we'll leave it here in regards to making.
We have about 5 to 8 minutes, so we're good.
Okay, good. So I'm gonna ask some questions that some of the people have posted because we like the engagement with our posters, and there's 2 questions out here, so I don't know if you'll be able to get to both of them. One of them is in regards to the MEAC. And I know this is kind of outside of that, but I'm gonna rephrase it in this message. Obviously, we heard the news with Delaware State is sticking with the MEAC. Some of the things that you said that the MEAC would be fine, and then it's probably going to be able to expand and continue to move in the MEAC SWAC celebration. MEAC SWAC celebration. MEAC SWAC challenge as well as the celebration bowl. If I can get that out. With that, if there was a case where some reason the MEAC did have more teams leave, with the relationship you have with Dr. Thomas, if there was a part in regards to what we've seen with the Atlantic Sun, with some of the extravagant components they were talking about with expanding, with partnerships of different conferences, would there be a chance in regards to possibly the MEAC becoming a part of the SWAC in terms of a merger if it got that desperate at times?
Well, I haven't gone that far, to be very honest with you. I have the complete confidence that the MEAC is going to be there. I've had conversations with Commissioner Thomas, obviously, through this process, and I have complete confidence that the MEAC is going to be there. Our plans are for us to move forward as we normally have. There's a 3-year process at minimum, as you've reported, so there's time to sort all of this out, but I have no doubt, and I know this is my 3rd time saying it, that the MEAC will be fine, and our plans are to move forward.
But I think that's an indication, and that needs to be said. I think that's an indication of what we got today. Everybody thought the world was falling. Everybody just knew Delaware State was gone, and we wanted to run with it. I'm saying we because we're part of the media. I told everybody to slow down, but it was out there, and it was a newsworthy component. But we just heard today that Delaware State committed and saying we're sticking in the MEAC, and that is important in terms of that July 1st date. So I think what you're saying is important. I
tell you what, if I was in the MEAC and I know I only had to win 5 football games to get a shot at that $1 million, I would take those cards versus somewhere else. I know I would do that. I'm not an athletic director, but it just makes sense to me. The money is in the celebration bowl. The money is not in the FCS playoffs. You have to pay, even if you get in, to play in the FCS. Even the host, you have to put an absorbent amount of money. The money.
Thank you for saying that, because people just want to forget that as if we're just flush with money. The other thing, to your point, Charles, before I get to the other question and let you go, because there's one more that we want to get. This one of our followers put out there is the fact on the basketball side that's true as well. With the money associated with winning a basketball tournament. Now you have to beat, like you said, it's 7 other teams. So if you're Norfolk State and North Carolina Central that's dominating in basketball and being able to bring that windfall to your conference, and in a lot of ways, some people think that the road has got easier just by definition of less teams, and the fact that you can dominate many other conferences. Now you can become the big fish in the conference at this point, and that means that the money that divided from the conference spending, it goes up.
Absolutely.
More people, it goes down unless you bring in more revenue. So just right now, if you don't do anything, the return on that revenue comes back. Absolutely. Somebody had a question in regard to what are the options for fall in reference to football and COVID-19? I know that you put out there clearly that October 19th was a due date, but if you can provide maybe some more conversation in regards to general, what is the conference doing in terms of its institutions? Because a lot of this is institutional driven of what's going on in the state. And I think we forget that. I know you're the commissioner and you have a lot of power, but a lot of this is based on what is respective to institutions in a given state. And what is that governor doing? Can you explain that phenomenon?
Yeah, I would say 90% of it is institutional driven. What our role and responsibility is to kind of merge it all together. We have our COVID-19 advisory committee. That plan is there. Individuals from all of our member institutions, from the medical profession, CDC, the NCAA, chief medical personnel. We've stolen from the Pac-12, the SEC. All of that is in our plan. So we have the social distancing, we have the tracing, we have the creating the bubble, we have wearing the mask, we have the testing, we have the isolation, we have all of that. But it's going to come down to the member institution. Everybody's talking about Morehouse, and they asked me about Morehouse. I'm not at Morehouse, so I can't explain why they made their decision. But I would say the same way that Morehouse made their decision, each of our member institutions will have that same ability to make their own decision. I think our responsibility is to bring it in as a conference, kind of like what we did for basketball, right? When it was time for the conference championship to be played, I got everybody together and I said, from a Southwestern Athletic Conference standpoint, this is not the right thing to do. Obviously, I was in the room with everybody else. We announced ours. Let the big boys go first, and then we put. But I was in the room, so I already knew what was going on. I called the presidents, and I said, "This is not going to work. This is not in the best interest." I got the presidents to vote, but from a conference standpoint, we led the charge. We will do the same thing with COVID-19 with our fall sports. But again, it's 90% institutions, but we will be that guiding force to bring everybody together and say, nationally, this is what everybody is doing. We have our plan, but at this point, it's time to proceed. At this point, it's time to push back, or at this point, it's time to stop. And we will definitely lead that charge.
Thank you with that. Last thing we have here as you close, is there any additional thing that you wanted to put out on the floor for the followers and the listeners that we did not ask you in terms of questions?
No, I think you're pretty well covered. We would like for you to, like us and join all of our social media platforms. The more Twitter followers and Instagram followers and Facebook followers we have, the more marketing we can do, more sponsorships, and we want to be able to deliver content to you. We have a new series coming out, videos of all of our member institutions. So please just join us on social media so we can get those numbers.
Certainly, count us in. We'll get that information out. And with that, we want to say thank you because, as you said, we trended both with Bethune-Cookman and FAMU, and we got to give some love to Jackson State with Big Snacks in regards to that trending as well.
Big
so we have
Snacks.
multiple trends during June in regards to that, so we can do it in all kinds of different ways. So thank you for your time, Charles. We'll look forward to having you back on, and take care.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
With that, that's Dr. Charles McClelland, the commissioner of the Southwestern Athletic Conference, better known as the SWAC to many, giving some time. And I know he had another commitment that he needed to get on, who committed to at 6. So I know there were a couple of other questions that were out there in regards to that. But as we start to get on it, we'll kind of sum some things up, and then we'll go into a short little break. And then we'll come back and do the second hour of the show, giving it to you. So just to round everything up in terms of what's taking place in there, in the second half of the show, we'll go into some more detail in terms of the scheduling part, some more detail in regards to the COVID-19 that Dr. Charles McClelland mentioned, as well as some of the questions that are coming out through our social media feed. We'll be able to see if we can get back in here and answer some of those questions for you in a little more detail. So with that, listen to us as we take this little break in regards to Dr. Cavil's Inside HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. We'll be right back with you.
YT Production.
I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU, and man, I hope my team they won. Yeah, I hope my team they won. Yeah, man, I I hope my team they won. I hope my team they won. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, too tired. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr.Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with the hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson. And you gon' learn today, how your team they play, how they play, boy. You gon' learn today, how your team they play, how they play, yeah. We represent that swag, that MEAC, and let me say, what's up to Tennessee, stay. Tune into the HBCU Sports Lab with Dr.Cavil, Mike and Charles, and I'm time.
I see you, Charles. I know you kind of show out. Mike up there, y'all don't understand. Mike was a step master. You know what I'm saying? So, I like to show out. We was in the parties. I would get in the line and do my little thing. But, on the stage, I saved that a little bit. I saved that for the big time boys out there like Mike, leader out there, come out there busting the stage down. They also had the need to put on these outfits where they got to show their chest and everything. And I'm just saying, I
know Mike did that.
Yeah. I'm a little more conservative, so I was like, I don't know, man. Y'all doing a little too much.
Now you are a prominent professor, so I will not relegate your stepping down. So we'll leave it there. We did have one complaint, Charles, from our listeners. Diane Weber says she had an official complaint. She said this is supposed to be an inclusive HBCU network, yet you and Charles persist to have that junk in your background. So.
See, I made sure I represent Diane.
Hey, you know what? I feel you, Diane, because I am also a proud graduate of Texas Southern University. So sports leadership program.
Yeah,
I am a graduate of TSU as well, but you just unfortunately see the purple and gold behind me.
So we're gonna have to go shopping. We're gonna have to go online to make this right. Now, let me say this though. In all seriousness, for all the fans that are out there watching, that you want your school represented, you can send a cap. You can send a shirt. Charles, what size do you wear?
XL.
Mike, what size do you wear?
I wear large.
I now wear XL as well now. I'm moving to a large. I'm just saying. It used to be a double X, triple X, so I'm really excited about the fact that I shrunk my shirt size. But really, if you want caps, which are much easier, get us caps. Send us some caps. I'll put an address you can send it in, and we'll be more than happy to represent your shirt out there. Or if you got some flags, get us some flags. We'll put it up. Now, we don't always shout out your institutions and talk about it. But if you want to have them represented on the show, we'll be happy to do that. We like the fact that we can do that with different caps and things like that. Over the years, I've done it at the first part of the show and got caps from Langston, Jackson State. I might do a rotation where I bring them back out as we start back up. But if you want those out there, go ahead and send them out there.
That's right.
In regards to what's going on, because we love doing that as well. With that, as we said, let's get into the second part of the show. Before we do that, as we're looking into that, was there any other news that you wanted to get out there? We'll start with you, Charles, in regards to some additional news that we might not caught at the bottom of the hour, if you will, when we started our 2-hour segment, the first part of the show. Some news that you wanted to put out there that we may have not addressed early on.
I always like to acknowledge my legends, and today is happy birthday to W.C. Gordon, Jackson State's all-time winningest coach, 90 years old today.
Ooh, yes. Happy birthday, Coach.
Happy birthday, W.C. Gordon. So
yes, sir. No doubt about it. Appreciate you getting that out. And
check this out, Dr. Cavil.
What you got?
During the 80s,
yes,
only 5 SWAC losses the entire decade.
Wow. That's impressive. 5 losses for a whole decade.
Whole decade.
There was some teams racking up losses in a year. They could get half a year done before they had 5 losses.
Yeah, currently they've done that in the past 2 years, but that's 5 for a decade. So.
Oh, he throwing hand grenades. Before he get in trouble, I'm gonna go to Mike.
So something I saw on social media, and I also got to give HBCU Game Day credit. Darius Leonard shared his details about a trip that he took to a Chipotle, and he and his party were asked to leave by the manager until they found out that he was an NFL player, and then their demeanor slowly changed. And he shared some candid thoughts and some frustrations that many African Americans feel, particularly in this climate that we have with so many young African Americans being targeted. So I thought that was good. I saw it originally on Twitter, but I've got to give kudos to HBCU Game Day for posting that as well. So,
yeah, they do a tremendous job over there at HBCU Game Day. I had the pleasure when they did a expansion segment where they brought all the writers in, Wally, Stephen Gayfer, Tolly, Vaughn came in there, and I had a chance to join them where we talked about some expansion components and what is taking place in the MEAC. And we're going to enter a little more of that dialogue because I want to get your viewpoints, and I think they're important the way that you all spin things and look at it from a certain perspective, business-wise and data analytic-wise, to go in a little deeper with that. So wanted to get into that and wanted to give them a shout-out, as you just did, in terms of what they're doing Game Day, doing some great work over there as they continue to move forward. Also, Block Sports. You can catch me on the segment I do with them on Mondays, as Michael Jefferson does a lot of good job out there. There's an article in regards to SWAC baseball that you need to catch up in terms of Black College Nines. They're giving some great information on what that looks like with Michael Coker. And so there's some good information there. Charles, I see you biting in the tooth to get some other information out there. What you got?
One of the things that I think, a lot of people aren't talking about, but I'm really excited. I'm a huge baseball fan, but with the addition of Florida A&M and Bethune-Cookman coming into the SWAC.
Absolutely.
Oh, my God, the SWAC baseball tournament?
Is it going to be just an Alabama State show at East now?
Really?
Or a Jackson State? Is it just? I'm asking the question. Is it going to be just a Jackson State, Alabama State show in the East now?
I can tell you now that's not for sure. I mean, that is for sure that there's going to be more than just Alabama State or Jackson State jumping up there. One, you have Alcorn State trending up. Now the question is who goes over to the West?
To the West,
right?
That much deeper.
Exactly.
It could be Jackson State. Yeah, if it's Jackson State or Alcorn, it gets even deeper into a really deep division. I would argue one of the top divisions in terms of just the parity in that division at the Division I level that has a composite of SCS teams. When you look at Grambling, obviously Southern, in terms of what they're doing in Texas Southern.
Wow. If you look at overall batting averages, you could argue that Bethune-Cookman, which has had one of the top team batting averages over the last few years, now comes and rivals with Jackson State over the last 2 years, who's had the highest team batting average, basically potent offense. And then you have Alabama State with the traditional pitching staff. So this is going to make some very interesting baseball play.
Well, yeah, I think as you bring it to it, I'll jump right to you, Charles. In fact, go ahead and jump in here, and then I'll follow up with my comment with both divisions. So, yeah.
I was taking a look at it. I mean, since the MEAC started baseball up again, Bethune-Cookman 19 MEAC championship, Florida A&M 8 MEAC championship. So tremendous baseball programs that now are going to be in the SWAC landscape. And I kind of take a look at it from this standpoint. Winning the conference, will this conference be strong enough to potentially host a regional? So I think that's an interesting thing to kind of take a look at.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And when we think about that, and as I was going to say, when you look at the MEAC, the fact that you got 3 very strong baseball programs leaving with those three teams winning the championships in the last couple of years with North Carolina A&T, Bethune-Cookman, and FAMU. So obviously a lot of people are going to talk about only 5 teams left. What does it do for the automatic bid? Obviously, they got some time to bring somebody in, even if they're just as a partial conference member, just for baseball. But the fact is, with those teams left, now their chance to win the championship and play in the tournament just uplift them.
Just
so
got up.
About, you've got a realistic chance as you with Delaware State just on the outside looking in, Norfolk State just on the outside looking in. Now you can ascend to that component of what that looks like. But back to the SWAC, when you talk about the division stuff, now it's without a doubt that each division is at least 3 teams deep on each side. Yeah. You can argue in some cases maybe 4. But it's without a doubt, it's at least 3 teams deep on each division. So now you get into that space where you can start arguing about truly in baseball, as Dr. Michael Prince does with his show over there in Carlos Brown, as they team up, as he's really big on baseball, that you have the chance that this might be the program that really starts first outside of softball. Can push for an at-large bid in the sport of baseball. And that's what Michael Coco talked about in his article. So it's fascinating.
Exactly.
Before I shift back to you, Charles, because I don't want to get in there, I wanted to make sure that Chivalry's not dead. So I wanted you to talk about a little bit of black college experience in terms of who's over that platform and where we have some women coming into this. Because next week we'll kind of sneak out there and give some hints. We're planning on bringing in Corey Staples, and with Dominique Whitehurst in terms of Air It Out, 2 young ladies coming out of FAMU graduate program in terms of them getting into this sporting podcast and talking about HBCU program. So I'm excited what we're going to be able to do with that interview next week in regards to them, to make sure that we give them some appropriate love, as HBCU Game Day has kind of put them right there where they deserve to be on front row in regards to getting a different perspective, giving some women a love. So talk about black college experience, if you would, in terms of who provides some content over there, if you would, Charles, before you get into your next comment.
Oh, sure. I mean, shout out to Keisha Kelly with Black College Experience. Her and Derek Thomas do a great job in terms of covering HBCU sports. She's CEO of Black College Experience. They do a tremendous job of providing another landscape, if you will, another outlet for HBCU athletics. So I always wanted to send shouts out to our colleagues in this, as you pointed out, the HBCU diaspora. That's very important.
Thank you. We got BJ Jones and what he does on his segment. We already told you about Sports Rap with Brian and AD. And then you have our guest, Charles Bishop, who doesn't really toot his horn enough in terms of what he's doing with some partners, specifically with Jackson State, in terms of the 1400 Club. Talk about what you do in that particular, because now that's growing, and we're looking at bringing some other people in the field with maybe Joe Clay, as many of you will learn about Joe Clay in regards to him looking at doing a special podcast for Prairie View A&M, along with some other individuals looking at doing that. So talk about that a little bit, Charles, the 1400 Club.
Yeah, sure thing. 1400 Club is a podcast that I co-host with some tremendous gentlemen over there that are Jackson State fans. I got to give shout outs to my guys over there in terms of everything that they're able to get done. And what we tried to do with that podcast is really kind of bridge some of the older alumni with new alumni and really bring out that history that we're so fond of and we're so proud of, as well as talk about the current things that are going on in and around Jackson State athletics. So definitely shout out to my guy, D. Corey C. over there, all the guys who contribute to the podcast, Chris Neely, all the guys over there. And it's a hodgepodge of hosts, but I'm fortunate enough to be on quite a few shows. But we've interviewed from presidents, the president of the university, to other stakeholders within the university, coaches, administrators, celebrities around Jackson State, National Alumni Association president. So it's really been a labor of love, and we're closing in on a milestone. We just started this past spring, and we're already closing in on 50 episodes. So I tell you what, it's been a labor of love, and we got some episodes in the can. We're going to talk a little bit about how important it is, or that the Mississippi State flag is coming down, because if you're a native Mississippian, that is, you take a look at it with a different lens, and that is significant to a lot of us over there that have grown up in the state of Mississippi.
Great job for sharing it, Charles.
Yeah.
I was going to get on you because you got so deep and got excited about your 1400 club. I was going to say, all right, that's going to slow down. But then you closed it so strong with taking down the flag. I was like, well, I can't get it.
Yeah.
Good job. No, in all seriousness, as an individual that has partnered up with you, not just as a fraternity brother, but really as a brother, in terms of as we move forward, you know, I want to say the way that you handled that, and I know the importance of coming from Mississippi and what that mean in terms of taking down that flag, and how many people over the years has fought in terms of liberation of at least a state that has such a large demographic of African Americans in that state, and understand truly what that represents and what it means, and the way they try to deploy it differently was not right. And the fact that people continue to fight over the years means everything. So for those Mississippian natives out there and those people that are living in Mississippi that feel the same way, it's good to see that the right thing was done in at this time. So let's move forward and keep that up with that. So wanted to say, Coach Emmanuel Stevens is the winner. He understood how you get your name out there. The women's soccer coach of Alabama A&M said, send me your address, because I have a Alabama A&M, AAMU soccer t-shirt, and I'm going to wear it in front of the wife and rub it in her nose, because she's the Alabama A&M graduate. I think, look what I got. When it comes in, shout out to Coach Stevens. You get the love of the day, because you're the first one to put it in there to send me a shirt and ask for it. So that's how we're moving forward there. With that, let's get into it and get back into some of this talk that people were talking about in a lot of ways that I'm really intrigued about when we break all this down, as we said in so many days, talking about what is next. Let's look at the framing from a sporting league. The commissioner, Dr. Charles McClelland, talked about splitting it. So we look at 6. He's going to put it out to the fans to have some thought process of where the conference will go, or who's coming over. So let's just put each other on the spot, and then we'll go in a little more about the scheduling components of what it looks like and why I may think there's a way that they may want to look at it moving forward. Let's go with Mike first. Between Grambling State, in terms of Jackson State, traveling partner with Grambling, they can come over. Traveling partner with Pine Bluff is Mississippi Valley. Travel partner in basketball, men's and women, for Southern is Alcorn State. So looking at that Mississippi as the dividing line, one of those Mississippi teams can come over. Mike, of those 3, who do you say is going to come over or should come over, and why?
Different reasons. I think if you look at, Alcorn coming over, it brings a different dynamic to the West if they come to the other side of the Mississippi. If you bring Mississippi State over, then that you look at right now, the way teams are paired, the way teams are playing, and how successful they are. Does the East now become the most powerful conference? To me, it would seem that the Alcorn State coming across Mississippi would bring more parity to the SWAC overall. Those are just my initial thoughts. Of course, you also still have to look at traveling. You have to look at things like that. But if you were to bring Alcorn State across the Mississippi, does that bring parity in the league? You've heard the commissioner say over and over, I want the most competitive league possible. And I really didn't have a chance to get that out. What does that really mean in his eyes? And is that parity? Is that, promoting all of the rivalries? Surely parity has to be a priority. And if that's the case, to me, if you're asking me that, I would have to say, if you're asking which Mississippi school to bring across, maybe you consider an Alcorn to add more parity overall to, of course, the balance through football, basketball, baseball. From my perspective, at least early thoughts would say that.
I think this is going to get good in terms of this conversation. One thing before I shift to Charles and get his opinion of who comes over. When you say parity, are you looking at parity in a sport i.e. football, or are you looking at parity in multiple sports across the board?
I said overall across multiple sports. So
Okay.
I'm considering football. I'm considering even basketball. I'm considering baseball. I'm considering track and field. You would think that the more value in terms of parity, at least from my perspective, looking in, would be bringing Alcorn across the Great Mississippi.
I want to give a shout out to Dr. Jason Cavil. He's going to be responsible for putting a lot of the scheduling templates together.
Yeah.
So we need to give some shout out to Dr. Jason Cavil. He's one of those strong individuals that are in the background that Charles talked about that allows him to go do the things he needs to do in regards to his responsibility as a commissioner, as well as bringing in sponsorship dollars in regards to the day-to-day operations in a lot of ways, specifically scheduling. He's going to be responsible for putting several templates together so the SWAs, the coaches for that matter, as well as the ADs, VPs of athletics, and the president's chancellors can look at. So I'm interested in that. So I want to give a shout out to Dr. Jason Cavil, Diane Weber, as she said, giving us some love, going back and forth. But with that, Charles, as I did a little tease there, of those three schools, Jackson State, Mississippi Valley State, Alcorn State, who would you like to see come to the West and why?
I think Mike really hammered it home, but I totally looked at this strictly looking at football, and I was going to get to the other sports, but I took a look at the SWAC championship. We've been playing the SWAC championship since 1999, and the representative from the West has been Southern or Grambling 17 times.
Yep.
So for parity's sake, I am sending Alcorn to the West, and I was strictly looking at football. It would be fun watching Alcorn in terms of basketball and baseball over in the West as well. But strictly from a football standpoint, I would be so looking forward to. We talk about how the SWAC West is a beast now. You send Alcorn over there. Alcorn
Exactly.
and Grambling's already a rivalry. Alcorn and Southern has taken off and gone somewhere else beyond the fray. So when you send Alcorn over there to the West, oh my God!
I was also thinking of baseball. Think about it. It's been Alcorn, Alabama State, and you could say Jackson State in baseball. So you take one of those. Now you bring FAM and Bethune, and you put them in that division. Now you have a heavy baseball side of the conference. You got to take one out because the West, to be honest, has not been as competitive in baseball as the East side.
But see, baseball, I'm feeding you to the Lions because Southern is resurgent, and you got Texas Southern. You know Texas Southern. Once they get on first base, they stealing bases till they get home. So you basically, I'm feeding you to the Lions if I'm throwing you in the West. And Grambling is resurgent now. We've seen them come into McGregor Park a couple of times and really go off over there. But I tell you what, this SWAC, we got that focus on the SWAC East, but bruh. That West.
Yeah, you talk about that. Yeah, TSU is their baseball team is a function of their track team, so because they're gonna steal every base. But
so Alcorn, you better hold up on the football end because basketball wise, you got Texas Southern, and Prairie View over there in the West.
But does Southern want Alcorn over? That's the question. Does Southern
would love to have Alcorn over.
That's the question.
They want revenge.
We can talk about this for a while.
Yeah, I told you this is gonna get fun in a little bit. I want to give some more shout outs because people are coming in hard and headed. Donnie Page, Stan Hardy, Jasper Thale, Diane Weber is just cracking up. Brian Fulford is steady bringing it. Donna G and the work that she does, talking about shouting out people she does with her consulting company of bringing people together. Check him out. Jimmy Wilson, you know he's going to bring us love and do it. He says, no, if you want parity, you bring Jackson State over. Jeff Roberts, Mississippi Valley State. So the SWAC can keep Jackson State and Alcorn in the same division as Jeff Robertson. He wants to kick Valley over there because he wants the Alcorn Jackson State rival. It's still going to be played. I'm going to give you a way that you can do that. Chuck Hunt, who is that rapping talking about going in there? Yeah, that's a frat brother of mine. We going to give him a shout out. That's Lawrence McCall, better known as Tabby T. Lover.
T. Lover.
There is no other. Is the one bringing it in terms of Shody does. He owes us another one, so we're going to get in there. And we also have a new drop that we're going to get out there. We probably won't display it today, but we'll see if we can play it because I know Mike and Charles are chomping the butts to make sure to get it in there because this new drop, it includes them. I told you.
Oh, what? Stop. Hold the press. Hold up. Wait a minute.
So this is one thing that I want us to consider. Go back to when the SEC first did their expansion to 12 teams in 90. Obviously, it took place with that 92 season was the first season. They went to an 8-game schedule. In that 8-game schedule, remember, it's 6 teams on each side. So you know by definition, you got to play 5 teams. And right now, we're just going to look at football. You play 5 teams. So to play your other 3 games, you have to go into the other division. One way is to look at it is what was done in the SEC, especially what they did at first, where they had the same conundrum, where they had these rivalry games that exist that were split apart because of the splits. And usually I don't mention SEC teams on here, but in this case, because it's needed in regards to just giving people that identification nurture, is obviously you had old standing rivals such as Alabama and Tennessee. And if you remember, Alabama, as it is to today, is in the West Division. Tennessee is in the East Division. That was a big time rivalry for that, as well as you had the Alabama-Georgia game. I am cheating and looking over here because I don't commit the SEC stuff to memory. But the Auburn-Georgia was a big game. And so what the SEC did is they designated one rivalry, and you can even do it with 2, but the way they did it was one rivalry to start out, right? And you would rotate the other teams over a period of time. So what if you added 2 rivalries? Right, you shift team over to the left, and you have 2 rivals. So, for example, as you said in this case scenario, let's shift Alcorn to the West Division, but you designate them with 2 rivals. So, obviously, their 2 rivals would be Jackson State and Mississippi Valley. So, every year that continues, regardless. So, you save that rivalry, you split in divisions. And this allows you to rotate the other team. And you do it in such a way, in a 4-year period, you would see everybody in the conference. So the first 2 years, you could set it up in such a way that if we're just looking at the case study with Alcorn State coming over, their 2 rivals would be Jackson State, right? And Mississippi Valley, that's 7 games, right? Mm-hmm. And then you add the other ones where they play and they rotate them off. So 1 year, they would play Alabama A&M. That would be a home and home game. After that 2 years up, they would switch and play Alabama State, home and away. Right? The other games are set in their continuation playing. And then year 5 and 6, just for this case study that we're doing, they would play FAMU. It would rotate home and away. And then year 8, you play Bethune-Cookman. So over an 8-year period, you would see everybody. You could switch it up where you just have one of the rivals. And so they could keep Jackson State, right? And then you rotate, which gives you 6. And now you rotate all the other teams over a period of time, just like you did in the first scenario. So those are some ways that you can look at of who you bring over and still make sure that you capture the rivalry games. And it allows you, for the teams on the further side, Texas, do a such rotation where you don't have them playing Alabama and Florida in the same year where they're taking those long trips. One would come here, and you have one time where the trip would go there. It would rotate the next 2 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have one trip going there, you have one far trip, and then that's the same thing with Florida. So literally, you would only travel in that scenario, the one team over a 2-year period. So there's ways that you can get into these schedules where they really are interesting and capture the things that you want. In basketball, if we look at it in a scenario where you essentially separate the teams in divisions, right? Just for scheduling purposes. So this is important that you make this denotation that the divisions is just for scheduling purposes. So you would keep your West Division and East Division, but what it would look like in the standings would be just all 12 teams. Right? You would just have all 12 teams in your standings. So you wouldn't have divisions for basketball. You could do that. But what I'm hearing more is that you probably just have one standing, all 12 teams, but you break down in divisions. And what that allows you to do, if you do it that way, is you can set it up in such a way that you play everybody in your division twice. So that saves all those rivalries, right? So you still have the Prairie View rivalries with Texas Southern that take place. And you have all those division games, just like in football, which gives you 10 games, right? Because of the 16s, 5 times 2 is 10 games that you're playing there. And then you go to the other division, and so you're deciding whether you're getting 18 games, right? So that means you have 8 games left between 6 schools. So you can break that in such a game where you play 2 teams, or 3 teams, if you would, home away with 6 games, leaving you with the 2 teams, and you rotate them. And so there's the unique way that you look at the scheduling that way, where you still have it set up, where you create some of those rivalries that don't exist. So that means if you do the basketball with the 2 games and you Alcorn coming over, right, they still have the ability to play Jackson State in basketball home and away. They still have the ability to play Valley in basketball home and away, right? So you got 14 games now. So now you're looking at playing 4 other teams to maximize to get to 18 games, or do you want to double up a couple of those teams so you get to 20 games? And so that's the scenarios that you're looking at where it gets really funny, interesting in regards to what you do with scheduling. Go ahead, Mike.
If you went to that structure and you still had the 2 divisions, but you kind of had every team lined up, so that's basically listing all of the teams, would you still have an end of regular season championship in that model, like you do now?
Say what again now? How do you?
If I go through your example with the basketball, you were saying you'd have 2 divisions, but basically you'd kind of put all the teams and line them up, and basically so they appear as basically one massive division. If I understood you correctly, would you still have an end of season championship game, and then that team would be top seeded going into the tournament?
You talking about for basketball? Yeah, I think.
For basketball.
Yeah, for basketball, I think you decide whether you want to go with the scenario they had now, where the top teams make the tournament, where your top 4 seeds in that scenario get home games, and the bottom 4 rotate. Do you bring them all to one site now? Do you expand the playoffs where you could do a scenario where you bring the top 10 teams, but the first 2 teams get a bye?
Yeah, I started getting excited about that, and I started thinking about women's basketball because with Bethune-Cookman coming in, I know at some point I wanted to see a Texas Southern Bethune-Cookman matchup, Jackson State. And I got really excited on the women's basketball end because with you adding a team like Bethune-Cookman, who is an upstart, if you will, in the MEAC, they've won 2017 regular season championship. 2019 they split it with North Carolina A&T, and then they were the tournament champions in 2019. very strong program coming into the SWAC. And when you already take a look at, from a women's basketball perspective, teams like Texas Southern, Prairie View, Jackson State as an upstart, I really started getting excited about all these teams converging at one site versus the format that we have now, because I'm just a fan. I want to see them all.
Yeah. This definitely brings an element of higher excitement to the conference championship tournament for sure. And not only just women. I still, to be honest, I'm still excited about baseball, but women's basketball is another perfect example. I guess the other question is, with basketball, does this impact when you start regular season play?
Yes. That's an excellent question. If you go to 20 games, there's no way it can't impact. It has to. There's some questions that I was working with Dr. Jason Cavil. I got a chance to talk to him about some scenarios where you could even start doing some unique scheduling, and this is really outside the bag. So do not take this as if this is what the SWAC is going to do. It's just something that I propose, and an option where you could look at redoing the scheduling, and this might be even more important now as Charles talking about trying to seek more television, and we think football, but this could feed basketball. I set it up in such a way when you took your trips and your travel partners that you could split them up in such a way that you have, for example, let's look at Alabama A&M and Alabama State coming to Texas Southern Prairie View as travel partners, right? You could have the Alabama A&M team come in playing, let's say, Texas Southern on Thursday, which means they would play Prairie View on Saturday, right? But you would have Alabama State play Prairie View play Prairie View on Saturday, but they would stay over and start their game against Prairie View on Monday.
Right. So
you split it in such a way that now you have 3 days for television.
Yeah.
You have a Thursday, Saturday, and Monday.
Sunday. Yeah.
So this is why y'all say the consultant. This is how I make my money and why we able to do the show. We still need cash app and need some support. So y'all can do that here. Just letting you in. This is how we put this together, how we able to make this work. These are the things that I put out there and spend a lot of time in my class, and then I ship it over to one of the conference commissioners, and they say, oh, this is pretty good. Let's look at it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it gets in there, sometimes it don't. But I say all that to say now, as you look at the 20-game schedule, the one way that you can do it is also we looked at spreading the season out where you start conference play before you let students out in the fall. They've done this before, so don't think that it's never been done before. But you committed that, and the other reason why you would do that is the fact that now you move the fact that the Prairie View Texas Southern game that had the conference conflict where it started before school came back in. So you played other games early in such a way that the Prairie View game now kicks back further in the season. So students are involved, and you started early before students leave to get them excited for basketball, which is not a bad thing. Early before they leave. And you can do some double headers if you have football games on campus. You can set it up in such a way that people can really set up to have an all-gate contest where they go to football, mid-afternoon and then stay around for basketball in that evening. So there's some unique ways that are real creative that I'm really excited about, that I know for a fact that the SWAC is looking at in regards to seeing how do they provide more inventory, how do they do things uniquely and differently, but still breaking from tradition, but still in such a way that it saves travel costs and doesn't radically change the concept of pairing the men's and women's travel partners. You still have advantage of that, because Saturdays you would have 4 games, if you would. 5 games in the conference set, like you still do now. You have 5 games, but now instead of having 4 games on Monday, you have 2 on Monday and you have 2 on Thursday. So it's the same scenario. You just spread it out. Now you can sell that extra game day ESPN. What do you think?
Dr. I have to say this, and I'm so impressed by the SWAC office in terms of the thinking outside the box and showing flexibility, if you will, while still trying to hold on or try to maintain some of those historic traditions, those historic relationships. But I've been tremendously impressed over the past 3 years now in terms of the outside the box thinking, and that's why I think this conference is moving in a trajectory that fans of this conference are really have got to be excited.
Yeah, absolutely.
No doubt about it. What are your thoughts on that, Mike?
Yeah, I think in regards to CB's just their overall approach and their take and their balance so far. They outside the box when necessary, but balance also when necessary. You can listen to the commissioner, and what I'm really impressed with is he's very engaging, but he's taking a very slow but methodical approach to doing this while still thinking outside of the box. He's 3-4 strides ahead. He's playing chess, not checkers, in order. And you can really talk to the whole staff, SWAC staff, as Charles alluded to. So I like the approach. I like this. This does, to be honest, I know you don't like it, Dr. Ville, so don't say nothing to me. I don't want to hear it. This does remind me of the 1990 expansion of the SEC for a number of reasons. Number one, that conference kind of got its name on building on rivalries. If you remember, but I'm the oldest man here, I think, on this show, and I can remember when
we're not gonna hold that against you.
Yeah, I also said I'm also the oldest, but the better. But we won't get it. But when they first started, they were not the SEC.
Here goes his fine wine comment.
So they got their market off of building off rivalries, and that's how they became that household name. I see the SWAC as a better version of that, in my opinion, because some of their rivalries they had to build and market. Now you're getting Bethune and Fam. You already have some ready-made rivalries. It's just a matter of managing and scheduling. That's why I say this is a lot better situation. So
I think you make a great point, and I think in this case it's appropriate to look at the SEC. I did it myself. So the only time I get, don't bring them up is when we try to make this framework that, the new SEC. I don't like that kind of BS stuff, because before there was a SEC, there was the SWAC. And those players that you talked about that are dominating the SEC, and we understand times change and nothing wrong with that, but they started, the incubation was here in the SWAC. And at that time, the programs were FAMU in terms of that, and because there were less teams in the SWAC, you had more crossover matchups with FAMU, Tennessee State for that matter, Alabama A&M and Alabama State even. So you're absolutely right when you look at it in terms of what does this mean expansion-wise. I think that's extremely appropriate. So no, I won't give you no pushback on that one. I'll give you pushback in terms of your age. That's something we're going to hide.
I'm 29. That's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Exactly. So I wanted to change pace a little bit as we move over, because we looked at those scenarios from the Big Ten, SEC, ACC, Conference USA, from different scheduling models. The last thing I will add as we transition to this next part, it'll be interesting to see that it's probably most likely that baseball will go back to divisions. And it was interesting because this was going to be the first season that baseball actually was going to alleviate divisions, play every team with some teams being able to rotate. So they were going to kind of do what we see from a football perspective of the old, where you would have a full 8-game conference schedule times 3, which would have been 24 or whatever, and then you rotate some teams off the division. So there was going to be some cross-divisional play in baseball. It'll be interesting to see what will happen with baseball expansion. Will they continue with the idea of this rotation framework, or will they just look at staying within the division? It's something that I'm intrigued about to see what they'll say in baseball. And I think there's some argument and benefit to both travel expenses, what it means to giving your teams a chance to expose to a different area travel experience. And if you're not doing it all the time, you can mitigate some of the costs. So I'm fascinated to see what they're going to do in baseball. And I know, Charles, you're a baseball fan, so what are your thoughts?
I mean, what I'd love to see is, I think what we using the Mississippi Gulf Coast kind of as a midpoint, if you will. stadium down there, Jackson, Trustmark Stadium, where you can get some of these East teams that can meet some of these West teams, and you're not, going home and home, but you have some midpoint area somewhere where you can see a weekend tournament of some sort, things of that nature, and then you can at least see the matchup. But I like that kind of outside the box thinking, especially with regards to a midpoint somewhere.
I'll give you that. I love the way that looks like, because now you can start looking at pushing to some degree what does a classic look like in baseball.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think one of the conferences that could pull that off in terms of a classic in baseball, we see it with the what you would call a Power 5 classic as they play in these baseball stadiums. But there might be an idea to cut costs and play it at a minor league stadium where you have the cost containment, but you say these same ideas where you have some of these mini baseball tournaments, or some scenarios where you bring some of the farther teams away and play them in a neutral site and call it a classic, but it still counts or doesn't count in conference standings. That's something to look at. What are your thoughts on that, Mike? Is I know you came out as a big baseball fan with your sons playing baseball before they crossed over to lacrosse.
No, absolutely. I think you have the perfect opportunity, especially along the Gulf. I think CB hit the nail on the head, especially with the two teams you're bringing, with the two, FAMU and Bethune you're bringing in. Now you have that I-10 Gulf Coast corridor. Why not create a couple of doubleheader classics? Perfect opportunity. I mean, you hit the nail on the head, and I think that would sell really well. A couple of well-placed venues where you have two doubleheaders, 4 teams, save costs, meet Central Point. I like the idea of maybe using a minor league stadium. What's wrong with a golf court, or what's wrong with somewhere, maybe even Mobile or anywhere else. So just throwing out names would be perfect opportunity to get some teams together. And I don't see why they wouldn't count as conference games. I guess that's my only question. Why wouldn't they count as conference games? That would add more to the loop.
Yeah, I think you could create it in such a way that they would be conference games, or you could do them outside before the season as non-conference games. But I think you could do probably a combination of both. But the point is, the fact it would be interesting for them to look at some of that. So I'm just curious about that. What I did want to transition into, as we were talking about in a lot of ways, is now looking at the Atlantic Sun. I was part of the HBC game day with Tyler Carr, and we got to interview the Atlantic Sun commissioner. And obviously, those that are not familiar with the Atlantic Sun, it's in the southern region, as you probably could imagine by its name, mostly in Florida for most of its sports, or a lot of teams, but it's spread throughout the southeast playing basketball. But they do have other sports. They do not play football. But what the commissioner talked about is the fact that they have a partnership, which I thought was really fascinating, with the Big South in such a way that if they get a member, that they have a automatic ability to notify the Big South and have that member, if they have a football team, to play in the Big South.
Yeah.
And so as we kind of look at what's taking place in the MEAC, while everything is stand-packed, we do know that they're talking about expansion. So what does that look like in regards to them bringing in teams in such a way, if nothing else, for a sport? For like Winston-Salem State, obviously they cut their baseball, but the CIAA doesn't offer baseball as a sport in the CIAA after Winston State shut down the program. Does Virginia State look at making their baseball team Division I only? You see this in the NCAA has a rule that you can have one sport designated as Division I while the rest of your sports play in the same division. So, if, for example, you see that with UAH, University of Alabama Huntsville, with their hockey team. The hockey team is a Division I hockey team. All their other sports are Division II. You see that with Dallas Baptist University, with their baseball program. Their baseball program is a Division I baseball program, but all the other sports are Division II. As they eventually went, before they transitioned and looked at going to Division I and all of the sports from that perspective. So you've seen various scenarios where you have these institutions. North Dakota, when they had a championship hockey team, before they went Division One. When they played in Division Two, their hockey team was a Division One hockey team, while their other sports were Division Two. So that provision is in the NCAA book, and is not something that doesn't happen, where you can have one sport move up. And so that'll be interesting to see that format. But more is the case here. I want to get each of your thoughts in regards to how that may be able to something that the MEAC looks at in regards to creating a partnership with another conference in regards to how they move forward as a scenario. What are your thoughts on that, Charles?
In terms of creating a partnership in regards to football?
Yeah, if they lose another member, or as I said, with baseball, any of those scenarios. I gave a couple of scenarios about seeing if you can span baseball. We know, let's just start with baseball at that question. Baseball, they only have 5 teams. So to be able to keep their Division One automatic bid, they have 2 years after 2021 to add at least one baseball team. In regards to, as Roy has talked about the importance of HBCU culture, I wonder, as they talked about bringing in some teams, obviously they looked at that they would not be restricted to just HBCU.
Yep.
And so we understand that. But in a lot of ways, I think that's going to be probably for all sports members, but specifically sport driven as we look at it. What are your thoughts of them maybe talking to Virginia State? As I said in my package about bringing Bowie State, Virginia State, Winston-Salem State to partner with North Carolina Central, partner with Norfolk State, partner with Morgan State to get the numbers back to overall. That would be 11 teams. In football, that would bring you back to 9. You're very solid with that number. But if they can't convince that, do you go to Virginia State and say, hey, here's the second idea. Won't you turn your baseball team into a Division One? And then it might be the impetus for them to look at seeing over a period of time that they can transition all their sports to Division One.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts in looking at it like that, Charles? And then I'll come to you, Mike, for your thoughts.
I love it for sports like baseball in terms of them getting that sort of exposure in a conference format. The cultural component of it on a football level, I question, because I just don't know if it crosses over very well. That was one of the things that I guess I've noticed with regards to when you have these out of conference matchups against FCS opponents like North Carolina A&T playing Elon. I saw that was well attended, but overall, will you get that same across the board sort of look-see, if you will, if you're playing in a conference that doesn't? I don't know if it crosses. I guess I'm not putting my words together very well, but I'm not sure if it crosses over very well in terms of another sport other than baseball or sports that aren't as, I guess, fan-centric, if you will.
Yep.
Understand. What are your thoughts, Mike?
No, I totally agree. How do you get over the cultural component? Because in essence, you're creating kind of almost a merger within a merger, and each of your conferences have a certain culture and identity. I don't know if bringing those schools from the MEAC, CIAA over to the Atlantic Sun and having an agreement to play in the Big South, I don't know how you culturally get over that piece. I don't know if you want to subside your fan base enough to do that. You may can survive it, you may not. I think it's going to take a hit, and I just don't know how you get past that. I like the idea of talking to a Virginia State, a Bowie State, and say, hey, why don't you move up one, get one of your teams up to par, look at going Division One, and work it that way versus moving with the Atlantic Sun and maybe partnering others. I like that idea, but I'm with Charles. The cultural component is big. It's tough to put a dollar figure in it, and with this kind of move, I think you just can't get you can't foreseeably get past it.
So with that, Mike, let me go to you. Is there a team, or just in general, do you think MEAC is in a position where they can get a commitment from like a Patriot League team, like a NEC, Northeastern Conference team, or for that matter, a Big South team to move over to the MEAC as a full member in that scenario?
From a negotiating standpoint, I don't see where they have leverage yet,
Right.
honestly. Just considering where things have unfolded. If they went to maybe an NAC? Maybe they could.
It's NEC, Northeastern.
NEC. Yeah, maybe if they went to the NEC, they would. But I don't see them as having a lot of leveraging power at this point. It would be more advantageous to get schools to come to step up. You got to consider costs, of course. You've got to consider, in some cases, maybe upgrading facilities in a few cases. But I still think in the long run, that would be the better strategic move than to try to convince other schools from other smaller divisions to step over the MEAC. You also, at the end of the day, have to look at what's the best fit, and are the schools in the NEC a good fit for the MEAC? At eyes level, probably not. So I would say no. They don't have leveraging, and it's not a good fit.
Yeah, I want to ask you, Charles. What do you think? What are your thoughts in regards to them being able to convince a team? Because the reason I asked that for everybody that's following us in terms of this question, there's no independent program in that geographic region. Right. So for expansion, that means that you're going to have to get somebody out of a conference to come over, whether it's a conference in terms of the CIAA or other Division IIs in that area. They want to be Division I to move up, which we'll talk about the $1.6 million cost and how I have an idea way that you may be able to reduce that cost if you would. And I want to share that next as we kind of come to a close on this second hour of the show. But also the fact that you're going to have to bring somebody up. You don't have that independent. So, Charles?
Yeah, I think Mike said it. I mean, I'm struggling to find a fit in terms of bringing a team over to the MEAC, or the fits that I see. I'm not sure if they actually would want to make that financial hit to move up, especially the teams within their geographic footprint, the teams in the CIAA. So I've struggled to find, that sort of right fit that you're trying to move into that conference.
Right. So let me tell you another scenario, and I want to hear what the viewers think of this and your comments on this. So it was our understanding with the interview that the Dr. Dennis Thomas did last Friday was the fact that I asked the question to verify what is the cost. I know that they had the reports that they were talking about $1 million. He did verify that cost, and in fact, it's actually $1.6 million to move up. I didn't get a chance to do a follow-up because there were following questions, but my follow-up question would have been, how do you pay that? Is that a one-time check when you decide to declare that you're going to Division I, that you got to cut that, which obviously is significant, and that's what most people think. But usually what I know about the NCAA, that it's not like that. Usually it's a period of time. So they have a 4-year transition period. So let's say that it's a 4-year period that you have to pay that. So now that cost becomes $400,000 a year. That part of the upfront money is not as daunting when you break it down to $400,000 a year. Still significant, but not necessarily daunting. All right. Let's say that you cut that in half. Now it's only $200,000. Well, you say, Cavil, that sounds great, but where is the other $200,000 coming from? Let's say that the conference says that we're going to find additional sponsorship money or keep our sponsorship money and ask teams to defer that money, and they kick in that $200,000 a year for that school. So as I said, becoming creative. Now, we do this on the show. We do it. Use this, again, I'm just showing out a little bit. No disrespect. This is a thing that I do consulting-wise. So these are things that people pay to look at when I do these consulting studies. I threw one out there on a page. I threw some Twitter, and people asked about the study. These are the things that I do when I talk to different athletic directors, when I talk to commissioners, when I talk to other small businesses and high schools in regards to understanding strategies of how you move your organizations forward, departments even, deans in regards to that, provosts, presidents, and different ways of these are ways that you have to be. When I say innovative, this is the way I'm talking about understanding what I mean by being innovative. Too often we just look at things laterally. $1.6 million, oh, you got to do it, the world is. But now I'm saying I done broke it down in such a way, now your cost is $200,000 a year.
Yeah.
That's a different conversation when you're having with the school.
Yep.
Right? When you're talking about doing it, them doing $1.6 million up front. And why that looks daunting, now all of a sudden $200,000 is not, right?
It looks doable.
And whether that's the conference getting extra money to pay for that $200,000, or whether they ask in the school. Think about this. What if they ask the schools each to say, all right, we have 8 schools, you divide the $2,000 by 8, which is just $25,000 a piece that you're asking the school to do, to catch in. And I think that's Rob Calloway that we're going to bring here short via phone. But before we bring him in to tell us exactly what is going on in regards to him, because it's going to be a little change in regards to the show, and he'll give you a direct update of what's taking place. And first, we're going to say prayers to him and everybody in Atlanta and his family in regards to what they're dealing with. And I'll let him explain that. But before they do that, I wanted to get your thoughts quickly. Mike, you first, and then Charles, and then we'll get Rob to chime in and his thoughts on this. And quickly for review to make sure that he heard that is, obviously, we're talking about $1.6 million. To encapsulate this real quickly, is what we heard that you have to pay. Let's say that you pay that over 4 years. So that's $400,000 a year. That's not as magnanimous as some people would say if you talk about $1.6 million up front. Now it's just $400,000. What if I split that in half, $200,000? Doesn't seem as daunting. And you say, well, Cavil, you still got to find the other $200,000. Well, we're saying the $200,000 would be paid for by the conference, either them getting sponsorship doing it, or asking the current 8-member team to kick in so the conference remains and can get that $1 million. Is their incentive to do this? Because if it depends, you lose that $1 million in that nature, right? To do that. So just wanted you to think about what is that scenario if you do it like that. First, you, Mike, and then Charles, then we'll bring Rob in to give his thoughts and tell him what's going on.
Yeah, I guess, on top of the being a good, when corporations look to grow, they grow 2 ways. They grow organically and they grow through acquisition. When they get acquisition, there's a merging period. And you get creative with that merging period, which is what you described. It's not a one-time, we're going to pay this amount. We're gonna spoon feed it in over the course of several years. We're going to integrate them into the culture, which is, to me, a better fit for MEAC to say, hey, Virginia State, Virginia Union, Bowie State, come step up. It's not as daunting as it is. Let's get creative. Let's think out the box. Plus, to me, the big top take, it's culturally, it is a good fit organizationally, at least given the time, given the landscape of where it is. So I like the approach. I think it works. I think it will also work for the long-term survival and growth of the MEAC as well. They may change. They may metamorph into a different MEAC, 5 years down the line. But I like that approach versus the other one and getting creative.
Charles, your thoughts, and then we're going to go to Rob.
Yeah, really quickly, Dr. Cavil. I mean, you change the parameters of the conversation when you break it down in that manner, and it gives those schools a little bit more time to see if there is that fit, if you will, and you get an opportunity to from a broad-based approach, kind of look and see whether it is amenable to joining the conference. So I like the way that you kind of broke down the numbers, and it becomes a completely different conversation when you do that.
Dr. Cavil's showing out. He's showing out. Look at it. He's just showing out. Stop. Just showing out.
With that, let's jump in and Rob Calloway, I know you got some problems out there. Tell us first about that, and then we'll get your thoughts on this conversation. How you doing?
Oh, man, good, man. These summertime pop-up showers. I don't know if y'all get them in Texas like this. Well,
we're not getting the sound there, so we work on that. I'll just let you know, we tried our best there. They have lost electricity in Atlanta because they had storms earlier. So there will not be a show today from Rob Calloway. We were trying to pipe him in by phone so we could at least get his spirit in regards to what he do at the end of our show, and we could allow him to tell you directly. But for his fans that are listening to get that, what be today the 3rd hour HBCU Sports Talk, the usual 2 hours, you don't get that in regards to what's going on today because he lost the power. Roy, are you able to get him, or are we still having problems? No, no issue there. But so we certainly want to make sure that we send out thoughts for him as they're dealing with this and everything else that is going on. Just another chip there. But sure, next week he'll be doing what he does. Look for him on Saturday and Thursday, as I'm sure that they'll be back in the mix on Thursday during this regular time to give his show, and then Saturday, and then obviously we'll have him back next week to show us love in regards to what is going on there. With that, as we will extend and do our normal 15 minutes, so it gives us a chance to kind of close up here and do some more thoughts. I wanted to go back and shout out to some of the people and see what their thoughts were, and then get your thoughts on that. Lonnie Shaw has jumped in here and shown us love for North Carolina A&T, those Aggies, as he always does. Give him that. Herbert Bolden is going here talking about go Doc. He likes what I have put out there as he continues to bring it. His business out there. If you need some love, go check out Herbert Bolden and the things he does and support his business out there. Chuck Hunt says Washington lecture class. He said you bring it, Mike, with your terminology.
Shout out to Chuck. I listened to him this past week on a radio show out of Monroe. So.
Yeah, I saw that.
What's going on, Chuck?
Showing out a little bit. Go ahead and give it.
Chuck showing out.
Yeah. Jimmy said the CIAA tournament is not paying its winners $1.3 million, bro, but they split $1.3 million, and that money goes back to the institutions for scholarships for students. So that's important. They do a great job in terms of what they do there, but that is a significant scenario. The other thing that I want to bring in here as we look at this in regards to that is that Lonnie does bring up a point that you could have the shift where some teams decide to go down to Division II, and now they have a choice of looking at joining the CIAA and it growing in regards to that capacity. So that's one thing to consider. But before you talk about that and that consideration, or should I say, let me drop that on you, and then I'll come back to my point in regards to another reason why it may be advantageous for them to look to move up versus you see some teams moving down. What are your thoughts on going with you first, Charles Bishop, in terms of teams, some teams in the MEAC deciding to look at moving down to Division II and joining the CIAA?
Is it a financial hit moving down? We talk about it all the time. The money isn't moving up. The television, things of that nature. So where's the advantage towards quote unquote moving down to Division II? If you're trying to look at a revenue stream, that you definitely want to go to where the television dollars are.
Right. Yeah, you certainly have less television dollars.
Yes,
when you go down, you lose that NCAA basketball money.
Yeah.
That is about $1 million a year in terms of basketball money encapsulated with the other NCAA money that's associated. So no, all of it is not basketball money, but the total amount of money is about $1.5 million that the NCAA gives the conference that ends up going back to the institution in regards associated with other NCAA stuff that they do. Some of it's basketball related, some of it's study APR related, and the APR money just kicked up because that's another channel where you can get money if you do APR, that you can get a piece of that pie that they start kicking in next year. So that money that you get from the NCAA is going to increase at the Division I level versus decrease. You don't get any of that money anymore at the Division II level. So now your thoughts in terms of MEAC schools looking at moving down in Division II and joining the CIAA. Mike.
Oh, absolutely. My point exact. Now you lose, financially. Not only you mentioned the Division I basketball money, but remember, you still got the SWAC MEAC challenge. You still got the bowl game. So if any of those schools move down and then become Division II, can you still have that bowl game? Can you still have those benefits as well? So there's too much of a loss financially. So I do like the outside the box thinking, but I just don't see where it's viable.
Let me throw this last carrot and kind of get you to give your thumbs up as we start to close at the top of the hour. We will be closing as we normally do about 7:15. So hang in there with us, and we'll get some more of these thoughts as people are bringing in there hard and heavy. The other issue that people forget that there is studies out there that suggest playing at the Division I with more visual components of your institution increases your enrollment. So there is an advantage for Bowie State, Virginia State, and Winston-Salem State to think about moving up to Division I in regards to how do they rebrand those institutions. It's one of the things I talk about in regards to Clark Atlanta University, who people are just amazed when I tell them they are a doctoral II Carnegie classification. They're one of 3 private HBCUs with that classification.
Good one. Yeah.
Howard and Hampton are the other, but you never would think that with Clark Atlanta University. One of that is because of their visual status as a member of the SIAC. Now, this is not me just saying that I want to rip up the SIAC, but I'm giving examples for people to understand that there are serious advantages for playing at the Division I level, just for the reason in regards to the media attention and the perception of what your institution has when it operates a Division I program. It's the same reason that you see historically white colleges look at moving from the FCS to the FBS, because there are clear demarcations of what institutions want to market and categorize themselves in regards to where they operate their program, which is why I said and did the study years ago that is out there about whether several HBCUs should seriously look at moving to a FBS level. That study was done under the leadership of Dr. Charles McClelland when he was the VP of athletics at Texas Southern University with Dr. John Rudley when he was then the president. So they were seriously looking at germinating these ideas. So it'd be interesting to see if that study is something that Charles has kept and is considering as he is the commissioner of the Southwestern Athletic Conference. I've not heard that directly in our dialogues back and forth, but I would imagine that he has that on the desk. So I said it again. If you now rebrand yourself at Clark Atlanta, talking about jumping into the SWAC, i.e., let's say that Tennessee does come and you want to become that 14th member, you can partner with Clark Atlanta being the second private institution of the SWAC now, and you have the Atlanta market. What does that do with your ability to compete against Morehouse and Spelman for women now that you're saying, hey, we are a Division I program participating in the Southwest Athletic Conference? So yes, your athletic fees increase, certainly what you got to do with scholarships, but also your monetary value of money comes in, revenue associated with participating at the Division I level increases, right? So yes, your expenses increases, but your revenue increases. And then that's not to count in regards that if you can increase your enrollment by 3 or 4%, because now you become a bigger brand and people are saying, hey, what they doing at Clark Atlanta? Now your enrollment goes from 5,000 to 6,000 students. That money overall is significant to your budget of Clark Atlanta University, and part of that money can go now to athletics as well. Same thing with Virginia State or Winston-Salem State or with Bowie State in regards to ways to increase your enrollment to help mitigate that cost.
Let me ask this question, Dr. Cavil, in terms of how important do you think the psychological effect of watching Winston-Salem State attempt to go to Division I, or Savannah State participate in Division I and then come back down to Division II? How much does that play into other Division II teams looking and just saying, it's not worth it?
That's not worth it.
I think that's an excellent question that you asked, and thank you for bringing it up. I think it's more psychological to the fan. I think it has very little to do with administration. It is more of a psychological thing with the fans and the media. And we make it like the world is ending one way or the other. But for presidents, chancellors, and boards, for the most part, it's irrelevant. They're going to do their study and do their due diligence. I'll give you a clear example. You tell me, what was the difference between when Winston-Salem State decided to make the move to join the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference and when they decided to go back to the CIAA? What was the one significant difference during the decision component of that move, of those moves? 1, 2, 3 times up. You want to know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It was simply the chancellor.
One
It
person.
was simply the chancellor. And the chancellor at most of our HBCU institutions have that much control. We have to give some control to the board, and board chairs are significant. For most cases, in most places, it is the chancellor. If the chancellor can make the argument, and sometimes the argument doesn't have to really be that strong. They simply say to the board, I think it is in the best interest of our institution to move to the Division I, which is what the chancellor did at Winston-Salem State when they moved up to the MEAC. And he said, this is how we're going to do it. The thing that changed is he moved over and took the job at North Carolina A&T, oddly enough. And a different chancellor came in Winston-Salem State. He looked at it and said, I think it's best for us to go to Division II. That was the only difference in that move. Same thing with Savannah State. There's one president at Savannah State who ended up taking to Clark Atlanta. He's since retired. He decided that Savannah State should operate at the Division I level. They moved up. A different president came in and said, I think we should operate at the Division II level. They moved down. Langston University, Lincoln University in Missouri. When you remember the history here, when they were deciding they were going to move from NAIA, go to Division II and join the SIAC, you had 2 presidents, both of them happened to be alphas at the time, because they were talking to each other. They loved the cultural fit. They made a transition from NAIA to Division II. 2 different presidents came in. Women, not to say anything about women, I thought it was interesting to bring that up, took over the leadership. They looked at it differently. They said for Langston, they stand and actually rescinded the move to Division II and not joined the SIAC, went back to the NIA. The other president at Missouri, when somebody else changed, they decided to stay NCAA Division II, but they decided not to go to the SIAC. In all those cases, with just about any case you can point out, the decision is mostly the president or the chancellor. So don't get it twisted in terms of the morale or the psychological components about this, or just how big the money is, which I think is a fascinating question. I'm so glad that you asked that in regards to getting that to our listeners. A lot of this is simply about the president. You have some universities that have more synergy with all the people together, which you've seen to some degree in North Carolina A&T when they made that move. You've seen it in a lot of ways with FAMU when they made that move, that you had a lot of key stakeholders involved in regards to that synergy pointing in the same direction that they liked the support of that going there. What I thought was interesting, I was hearing that North Carolina A&T in regards to some things that's taking place with the alumni association. So I need to verify that. I'm interested in that. But as far as I knew, when they made the move, that most of the key stakeholders were all on the same page, whether it was alumni president, boards, and et cetera, foundational people. But that's not always the case. In fact, that's usually not the case. With that, I think we right there on top of the page went over just a little bit, but the conversation got good there. Keep chiming in. We've got a lot of comments going on, so we're going to get back and see if we can answer some of those comments in terms of that, as the listeners are going back and forth with the case with CIAA and the MEAC. So I think that's great. I can't wait to read it a little more in detail and chime in with my thoughts as we go on back and forth. So I want to shout out again to Lonnie and Jimmy as they getting that conversation going nice and heavy. Want to shout out to the rest of the followers out there. Continue to follow us, give us love. We'll make sure you get that shout out. Again, want to give a shout out to Coach, Alabama A&M women's soccer coach, Coach Emmanuel Stevens, jumping up and making sure that I get a Alabama A&M women's soccer shirt that is coming in the mail. And so with that, let's get it on. Close out the show. I am Dr. Dr.Cavil, inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop, presented by THG Agency. I am Dr. Dr.Cavil, a.k.a. the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports, recently given to me by Rob Calloway of the HBCU Sports Report. Again, make sure you check him out. He'll be back with y'all on Thursday as they had lightning in the area and were not able to do the show today or come on our show. With that, I am Dr. Dr.Cavil, the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports, with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. As we come to a close, we hope you enjoyed our lecture today with the guest, Dr. Charles McClelland, the Commissioner of the SWAC, giving some insight in the first hour And so we had a 2-hour special today. We'll break it up in 2 hours so you can get it out there as well. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. We will be back at our regular time next week from 6 to 7 right here on the BCSN network and K-Switch Radio, 12:30 a.m. Houston, Texas. Follow me, Dr. Cavil, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. That's DrKenyattCavil. Again, that's DrKenyattCavil. Dream big and continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Course lecture
dismissed.